Stormwolf! Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Alright, so if anyone doesn't know, we're currently in test realm for Spring 2022 Wizard101 update. And what that means is there's lots of changes, and there's lots of Beastmoon changes too. But there was something that I was disappointed to see, and that was the lack of balance changes for Beastmoon. Because there is a form that desperately needs to have a nerf, and that is Stormwolf. I've been preaching Stormwolf balance changes, specifically nerfs, for a very long time. I was talking about it way back in my Beastmoon roundtable. If you haven't checked that out yet, check it out. It's probably going to be here, or somewhere totally different. Anyway, Stormwolf is used in literally every single competitive match. Every single one. I used to say 99.9% of the time I'd see Stormwolf. I'm gonna say 100% now. At least in competitive matches. In matches where it's all random solo queuing, they may not have Stormwolf or know about it, so they're not gonna use it. But when there's full teams facing each other, I always see Stormwolf being used 100% of the time. I could say with confidence that's not how this game should be designed. There shouldn't be one form that's just dominating the meta right now as much as Stormwolf. KI, you fixed Myth Drake, you perfectly balanced it. It's wonderful, it's still used, but it doesn't dominate. I would love to see the same change applied here as well to Stormwolf, such that you nerf it and balance it, and it doesn't get used every single game, because it's not fun. It's not fun. I don't even play Stormwolf. I could if I want to get an easy, cheap, brainless win, but I don't, because it's not fun, and I like to challenge myself, so I use forms with lower damage per pip, and, try to win with that. So KingsIsle had mentioned in the past that they, were going to take a look at Stormwolf, see what they can change with its spells, but they never actually did anything to it yet. So I was disappointed. I was kind of hoping that I'd see some changes to some of its spells in Test Realm, to no avail. The form remained untouched. So I wanted to make this video to once again emphasize the point that Stormwolf needs to be nerfed for the sake of Beastmoon, to save the game, and also specifically show you some visual examples of cards, what they would look like post-nerf if I were in charge, what I would like to see specifically for these cards. So I have in front of me the original 10 Stormwolf spells. This is pre any nerf. This is as they stand today. Quite frankly, I just want to show you why they're overpowered and what I would like to see each card get nerfed into. You're gonna notice a trend too when you see my potential nerf ideas, and that is bringing Stormwolf from a 100 DPP form, that's damage per pip, to a 75 DPP form. There's just so many reasons why it should be 75 DPP already. Just a few. First of all, Storm Colossus was just put out recently. That's its only other large Storm counterpart. Storm Colossus has 75 DPP, and so Stormwolf should also have that. That's a balanced damage per pip for a large Storm form. There should be no large form that has 100 damage per pip. I know as it stands right now, I think Balance Wolf has a few 100 DPP spells, and Fire Colossus too. I also think that those should be nerfed as well. But I'm focusing on Stormwolf just because it has a lot of 100 damage per pip spells, which should be nerfed. So, cool. Alright, so basically what I would like to see is a nerf in damage per pip from all of its hits from 100 damage per pip to 75. And I'll show you exactly what I mean in a moment when I go card by card. However, I do think that the blades could stay at 100 value per pip. So Turbocharge and Storm Surge should remain how they are right now. There's two main reasons for this. One is that Stormwolf players should focus more on blades than actual hits, just because it's a Storm form, so that would make it more unique to its role, to its school. Storm forms in general should be blading, more than they hit. Just like Ice forms prioritize their shields, because as it stands right now, Stormwolves have such high value in their hits. Right now they have 100 DPP, so players tend to just cast and spam their hits instead of focusing on blades at all. Reason number 2 for keeping its blade value higher than its hit value is that this would make ice forms counter it better. I've seen people try to counter my points, saying that if you use an ice form, you could just counter Stormwolf. Like Ice Colossus can just counter Stormwolf. I mean, sure, ice forms have spells that counter blades, but again, as it stands right now, Stormwolves have such high damage per pip that there's no reason to even blade. Why not just keep spamming your shark? If you're against an ice, you don't have to blade at all. You have such strong hits that it's not even necessary to blade. So by keeping blade value higher than hit value, you'll not only play more to your school, which gives you a more unique experience and playstyle for being a large storm form, but also ice forms would be able to counter you more easily, because since you'd be playing with more blades, ice forms would be able to clear that for conditions and do whatever they do to counter you. Yeah, so we'll take a look at the Stormwolf spells as they are right now in my concept for a nerfed Stormwolf form. Alright, so let's go one at a time, shall we? So the first spell, Catalyze, is its only 0 pip spell. It's a 50 blade and dot removal for 0 pips. It's a good spell. It's a great utility, makes sense on a storm form, good value for a large storm form. Happy with it. Nothing to change there. So Turbocharge is a pretty good spell. For 1 pip, you give a 100 blade and also a 50 shield if the target has a heal over time. That should not change. That's fine how it is. Again, I think the Stormwolf should have 100 damage per pip in blades and 75 damage per pip in hits. And, you know, in which case we wouldn't touch this. Thunder Gaze, this is an interesting one. So this spell is notoriously broken just because you could spam it, you know, up to 4 times in a row, which is nuts. You're stunning and dealing 50 damage for 1 pip. That's crazy. That really is. And there's been a lot of complaints about it in the past. To be totally honest with you, this is not the issue with Stormwolf. This is not the issue. I think it should be changed, and I'll show you in a second what I think it should be changed to, or rather swapped with, but this is not the main issue. The issue is the high damage per pip. It's the high damage on the Stormwolf hits. But for the sake of nerfing this form and keeping it balanced, I think that we should swap it with the Storm Rat Stun. So, in my concept for a changed, you know, balanced Stormwolf, you would see Thunder Gaze, that's the owl card right here, stunning for 1 pip, and instead of dealing 50 damage directly, casting a 50 trap if the enemy has a trap, right? So it's a condition that isn't the easiest to pull off. You certainly can't pull that off yourself, but so most of the times you'd be just stunning for 1 pip, which is way more balanced, because that's pretty much what the Storm Colossus does, and that's what the Storm Rat does right now. And also, if this change does happen, I like to see it swapped with the Storm Rat, such that Storm Rat gets the original Storm Wolf Thunder Gaze, right? Alright, so Feeding Frenzy is a terrible spell, and that's because for 2 pips you're dealing 100 damage and potentially giving yourself a pip if the opponent is trapped. That's a condition that's hard to pull off. You need to be with an ally that can trap. You certainly can't pull that condition off alone. So most of the time you're just dealing 100 damage for 2 pips, which is 50 DPP. That's pretty terrible. So that should be buffed from 50 DPP to 75 DPP. So here is my concept art, if you will, for an updated buffed Feeding Frenzy, which deals 150 damage and has the same condition, you know, give a pip if the enemy's trapped for 2 pips. So up next we have Storm Surge. So for 2 pips you're giving a 200 blade and a potential 100 blade if the target has a blade or a weakness on them. You know, definitely a really good value spell. I think it's a little bit too above the curve personally. However, you know, for the sake of not nuking this form too hard, maybe keep it as it is. Again, it's a blade. I'd like to see blades, you know, remain as 100 DPP while hits get nerfed to 75 DPP. So I'm fine keeping Storm Surge how it is for now. Maybe down the road nerf it if it still remains too strong. Tempest Tiburon. What's a Tiburon? Tiburon, am I saying that right? It's probably a shark. Storm Shark, let's just say that. Right now, it deals 200 damage for 2 pips. This shouldn't exist. It's a large form we're dealing with here. A 525 health large storm form that starts with a bonus pip, which means you could deal 200 damage on round 1. That should never happen as a large form. So 2 pip 200s are a whole monster on their own in terms of just the Beastmoon community and people's thoughts and complaints. You know, these are incredibly strong because on round 1, if you have a bonus pip, which more often than not you obviously do, you could deal 200 damage, which is nuts. You can knock out small forms just like that before they even have a turn to hit. It's pretty crazy. Stormwolf should not have a 2-pip 200. So Storm Shark, as it stands right now, deals 200 damage for 2 pips. That means it has 100 DPP. I think that 100 DPP should get nerfed to 75 DPP, such that the new Storm Shark, post-nerf, should deal 150 damage for 2 pips. You know, that would make it so you can't necessarily knock out small forms on round 1, because you're a big form. No one's gonna knock you out. It gives you such an unfair advantage to start with 200 damage on round 1. It's crazy. I could go on about this forever. You know how I feel by now about large forms having 2-pip 200s. So for the sake of the time length of this video, let's just keep moving forward. Next we have Voltaic Phoenix. That's a 3-pip hit, which deals 300 damage or 400 damage if you have a heal over time. What? Oh my god, so that's 100 DPP straight up. That's just a massive 300 hit, which most forms don't even have. And then again, consider that this is a large form we're dealing with here. A 525 base health form, which should have lower value on its spells. And there's small forms in the game right now that don't have value even close to this. It's crazy, it's crazy. And the fact that the condition can bring it up to 400 damage for 3 pips, that's insane. That is so crazy. That's just like, that's mind-boggling. To have a 3-pip hit, which could potentially deal over 100 damage per pip. That's an Ice Elf killer. That's an Ice Fairy killer. Or below. That's just a small form killer. It's crazy. It really is. This shouldn't exist. I'm telling you, I feel so strongly about Storm Shark and this Phoenix here being the value that they are. It's nuts. This is the problem with Stormwolf. Anyway, this should be nerfed to 225 damage, or 300 for 3 pips. You know, this way, instead of having 100 damage per pip, we're dealing with 75 damage per pip post-nerf, right? So 225 damage, or if you have a heal over time, you will deal 300 damage. And it's still good. That's the thing. I have a feeling people are going to complain to me in the comments saying that this form is going to get nuked. No way. You're still dealing 225 damage for 3 pips with potentially dealing 300 damage. That's really good on a large storm form. Cool. All right, so next we got Sheet Lightning. Don't touch it. Pretty meh card. Nothing too much to say about that one. 100 damage AoE. Remove a dot on your entire team for 3 pips. If anything, maybe it could be buffed a little bit, but it's fine how it is. Okay, so cool. Next is Avenging Merit. So this one, I'll just call it Storm Efreet, okay? Storm Efreet, as it stands right now, is busted. For 4 pips, you're dealing 200 damage AoE to all enemies, or 325 damage if you have a damage over time on yourself. That's crazy. You're dealing, the condition's an additional 125 damage. That's nuts. And a lot of forms can cast dots. So this condition, you know, it doesn't happen all the time by any means, but it's pretty frequent. That's crazy value. That is insane. It's mind-boggling that KI would give a large form a 200 AoE for 4 pips with this absurd condition that gives it so much more value. Instead, increase the pip cost to 5 pips and bring down that condition a little bit, just a tad, from 325 damage to 300. So now, if you look at my revised, nerfed Storm Efreet card, for 5 pips, you're dealing 200 damage to all enemies, or potentially an extra 100, such that you deal 300 damage to all enemies if you have a dot on yourself. That's good, that's fair, that's balanced, that's how it should be. That's how any new form that KI would put out would have, right? That's the whole purpose of balancing. It's just to match other forms that exist in the games. There's no imbalance. This is why we have Stormwolf in every single fight. Last, we have Sea King's Thunder. Keep it the same. 200 AoE and a stun for 6 pips. Pretty bad. I'd say a little bit below the curve. Just in general, stunning at higher pip costs is not as good as at lower pip costs, right? Because you can't really spam it. Plus, I assume if you're using Sea King's Thunder, it's such late game that, you know, you're probably going to knock out your opponents anyway, so the stun's kind of unnecessary. But I keep it, you know, it is still decent value. And most of the time you're probably still going to be using Storm Efreet. So, cool. That's pretty much all there is to it. Again, one more time. Here is the original Stormwolf spell roster, and here is my version of a nerfed Stormwolf spell roster. So just to drive home the points, I want to take Stormwolf's damage per pip on its hits down from 100 to 75, where it belongs, and, keep the damage per pip on its blades the same. It's fine at 100 DPP for now. Maybe down the road, we can also take that down from 100 to 75 as well. We'll see. Love what you did with the Mythdrake KI. Would love to see the same change applied to the Stormwolf as well. I will also tweet about this. I'll, tweet the concept art I have for this nerfed version of Stormwolf. And hopefully this can get pushed out in test realm, because we're right now currently in test realm for 2022 spring season. So that would be wonderful. I could not be happier if you nerf Stormwolf in this test realm KI for spring 2022. Catch you all in the next video. See you later. Peace.